Well, thank you again for the kind invitation to be here tonight, and I'm reminded whenever I arrive here that I have wonderful constituents that include people like John and Suzanne, so I really don't have any option but to be here tonight. I'm what I think you call politically wedged, but always absolutely delighted to support what we've been talking about already this evening, the great work that has led us to have now reasonable confidence that our public hospital system will indeed proceed in a way that the people of Queensland have made it quite clear that they want it to proceed. And that is really our mandate, all of us, whether we're clinicians, politicians, patients, other community members. That is the overwhelming message that has actually come out of this long and at times very difficult journey. And so whenever we face adversity, it's good to know that at least one consolation of it all is that we do have a strong message, a strong mandate. And I have had, as part of our discussions with John and I along the way, he's brought me up to speed with Scottish poetry, and in deference to John's great Scottish heritage and also in acknowledgement of his expertise in the area, I've turned to Robbie Burns for a perspective on recent events. And indeed, it was Burns who reminds us that the best laid schemes, oh, men and mice, gang after gley. And fortunately, the original doctor contracts indeed were severely awry. And that was because they were based on the fundamentally flawed premise that empowering third parties to determine the relationship between patient and doctor was in the public interest. Patients clearly believed it wasn't, opinion polls showed it wasn't, and doctors knew it wasn't, to the point that many of you felt obliged to resign. Thanks to the integrity, the skill and the commitment of particularly the negotiators, we now have a framework that is far more likely to properly and reliably serve the interests of patients, the community and the health professions. But we still have a residual issue, and indeed, again, I'm indebted to Robbie Burns, the same poem that gave us the reminder of men and mice going after gley. And I've translated this into English, John, just so we can all understand it. But the words go, "But oh, I backward cast my eye on prospects dreary, and forward though I cannot see, I guess and fear." So having addressed the contracts, the next challenge is to fix the dreariness, the guessing and the fearing. In other words, establish trust. And as I heard Stephen Withers say on 612 a little while ago, when you don't have trust, you actually have to have certainty. So that is the burden on us all as well, to make sure that we now have not only contracts that provide certainty, but much more importantly, or at least equally importantly, we have a framework for the health professions that actually clearly recognises their role, that gives certainty to the role, so that all of you can actually get on with caring for patients rather than having to divert the considerable amount of time and energy that has gone into dealing with the issue. And it was indeed the noted educationalist and author Stephen Covey, the author of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, who observed that trust is the glue of life. It's the most essential ingredient in effective communication. It's the foundational principle that holds all relationships. So if we're going to rebuild the trust, we've actually got to provide that framework that empowers doctors to do the job that they are qualified and indeed ethically and legally obliged to do. That means trusting and resourcing doctors to deliver as part of a team quality health care in a way that also achieves the greatest good from finite health resources. In practice, this means delegating the responsibility, the authority, and the accountability to frontline clinicians. Management's role is to obtain the resources and ensure that frontline staff are properly qualified and supported, and ensure accountability and performance against relevant benchmarks. Clear delineation and respect for those roles, with collaboration from management rather than command and control, will build the trust that is essential in high-performing organisations. There is a particular resource that is critical for accountability, performance and trust, and we see that resource being applied in many highly successful Australian businesses such as our banking industry. And that resource, as many of you know, is accurate and timely information that can be utilised to the benefit of patients, hospital boards, and indeed, very importantly, employees. Contracts will never substitute for absent or deficient information systems, and we should long ago have addressed the information deficiencies identified by the Auditor General rather than wasting time and effort on ill-informed contracts. The prognosis for rebuilding trust is guarded but favourable. The therapies I have touched on are being advocated, in other words, the delegation approach. For example, the Australian Centre for Healthcare Governance is holding a 2-day conference in May in Melbourne, which will examine the meaning, models and future directions for devolved governance in Australia's healthcare sector. A keynote speech of that conference is Motivation, Inspiration and Leadership, which will be given by Professor Fiona Wood, AM, Director of the Western Australian Burn Service and former Australian of the Year. I'm attending as an invited speaker and hope to return to share the insights, unless, of course, I'm offered a contract I can't refuse. In addition to this conference, there is a wealth of research from organisations such as the King's Fund and the Nuffield Trust, which all point, as I think I mentioned in my last chat with you, that they all point to clinical devolution. Of course, it has been pivotal here in Queensland in achieving the improvements that we have recently enjoyed, such as the removal of ambulance ramping, as well as great advances in surgical waiting lists and many other areas of clinical practice. So the prognosis, the reasons for the prognosis are all favourable, but will require, of course, ongoing work and also ongoing strong advocacy from all stakeholders. These things, as we know, don't just happen. So in concluding, I thank and congratulate you for working to achieve contracts that are in the public interest, for your tenacity to stay the distance, and for your teamwork in advocating for your profession so that it continues its vital roles in patient care, clinical training and research. I particularly congratulate the negotiating team for their tremendous effort, personal sacrifice and enormous skill in reaching the outcomes being presented here tonight. I wish you all great success in your ongoing service to the people of Queensland. Thank you.